Every day, the world quietly produces billions of small events. Most of them pass unnoticed. A few of them catch our attention. And once in a while, something happens that feels so precisely timed, so impossibly aligned, that we pause and wonder whether it was really just random. Coincidences sit in that strange space between math and mystery. They are rare enough to feel meaningful, yet common enough to remind us that randomness has a sense of humor. And the more people there are, the more moments we create, and the more chances the universe has to surprise us. In this video, we're going to explore why unbelievable coincidences happen far more often than you think, and why understanding probability doesn't make them less magical. If anything, it makes the world feel even more astonishing. If you live long enough, something impossible will eventually happen to you. Not just unlikely, but so shockingly precise, so perfectly timed, that it feels like the universe is whispering directly into your ear. Maybe it's running into a childhood friend in an airport on the other side of the planet. Or hearing a song you've been thinking about just moments after it randomly enters your head. Or meeting someone who shares your birthday, your favorite hobby, and even your unusually specific fear of jellyfish. Moments like these feel supernatural, or scripted, or fated. But what if these unbelievable coincidences aren't messages from the universe, but simply what happens when probability plays out on a massive scale? In this video, we'll explore why the rare sometimes becomes ordinary, why the impossible eventually happens, and why coincidences feel magical even when they're completely mathematical. And by the end, you may see your entire life and the randomness inside it in a completely different way. Let's begin with a simple observation. Your brain is not built for randomness. It's built for patterns, narratives, and meaning. Humans evolved to detect signals in noise because in the ancient world, misinterpreting randomness could get you killed. If tall grass rustled and you assumed it was just the wind, you might become lunch. If you assumed it was a predator every time you stayed alive. So your brain developed a bias when in doubt, see patterns. Connect dots. Search for intention. And this ancient survival mechanism is exactly why coincidences feel so eerie today. Your brain is always trying to answer the same question. What does this mean? And when two things happen that look connected, your mind jumps to the idea that someone or something made it happen. But most coincidences don't need intention. They only need large numbers. And that is where probability enters the story. Let's start with a small example. Imagine you flip a coin 10 times. There are 1,024 possible sequences of heads and tails. One of those sequences is 10 heads in a row. That feels impossible. But the key is this. Every one of those 1,024 sequences is equally unlikely. It's just that when you see 10 heads in a row, it looks special. When you see something messy, like head, tail, tail, head, tail, it doesn't feel meaningful. The probability didn't change. Only your perception did. This is the foundation of all coincidences. The world is generating vast numbers of events every single moment. And from this ocean of randomness, some patterns will always emerge. Not because the universe selected them, but because something had to happen. And humans are very good at noticing the interesting results. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood ideas in statistics, the law of truly large numbers. It says, given enough opportunities, even events with extremely small probabilities will occur. This law sounds abstract, so let's make it concrete. Right now, on Earth, 8 billion people are living their lives. Each day, every one of them experiences thousands of small events. What they see where they go, who they meet, what they think about. If each person experiences 5,000 moments in a day, that's 40 trillion events happening daily across humanity. Now imagine every one of those events as a lottery ticket in the grand game of coincidence. Some tickets will naturally contain bizarre combinations. The kind of combinations that make the evening news, or become viral stories online, or get whispered at dinner tables for decades. To us, they feel like miracles. To mathematics, they're expected. Let's look at some real examples. Consider the famous birthday paradox. Most people assume that in a room of 23 people, The probability of two sharing the same birthday is incredibly small, but it's actually about 50%. Double the room to 46 people, and the probability jumps to 95%. This seems impossible until you realize you're not comparing everyone to you. You're comparing everyone to everyone else. There are over 1,000 pairings in a group of just 45 people. This illustrates a crucial point. Coincidences often come from intersections of many small probabilities, not just one. When thousands of chances overlap, strange things happen. Now let's apply this idea to real life. Have you ever bumped into someone you know in a place you didn't expect? A different city, a different country, a completely random location? At first, it feels like destiny, but think about all the places you've been in your life, and all the people you know, and all the intersections where your paths could cross. Then multiply that by the number of people you've ever interacted with, and multiply again by the tens of thousands of micro-decisions that determine your day. Coincidences like this don't happen despite randomness. They happen because of it. But here's the twist. Humans only remember the coincidences that feel meaningful. Nobody remembers all the times they didn't meet a friend in a distant airport. Nobody tells the story of the 10,000 days when nothing special happened. This is called selection bias. We select the interesting events and ignore the mundane. If you wrote down every random event in your life, your coincidences would barely stand out. But because you only remember the remarkable ones, they seem uniquely significant. Let's go even deeper. When people share stories online about uncanny coincidences, they almost always leave out details that don't fit the narrative. You might hear a story like, "I thought about my friend for the first time in years, and then he called me that evening." But you don't hear that the friend had been planning to call for days, or that the person had already seen a reminder about that friend earlier, or that they think about random people all the time without receiving a call. Most coincidences are retrofitted into cleaner stories after they happen. The messy random reality is sanded away. Here's another fascinating example. Imagine you open a book at a random page, and the first sentence you see contains your name. This sounds unlikely, but consider how many books exist. How many pages, how many names, how many people picking up how many books every day. The surprise comes from how your brain frames the event. It feels like the universe selected that moment for you. But mathematically, it's just one lottery ticket being drawn among billions of others every minute. This is where psychology blends into probability. There are two key mental tendencies at play. The first is apophenia, the human tendency to find patterns in randomness. This is why people see shapes in clouds or faces in the moon. It's also why coincidences feel intentional. The second is confirmation bias. Once your brain notices something interesting, it starts searching for ways to connect it to your life, your memories, your expectations. It doesn't just accept the coincidence, it interprets it. Combine these biases with the law of truly large numbers, and you get the perfect recipe for mind-bending coincidences. Let's explore the emotional side of this. When a coincidence happens, it often feels personal, almost intimate. It feels like the universe is paying attention to you specifically. But in reality, randomness doesn't have preferences. It doesn't know your name. It doesn't know your story. And that's exactly why coincidences feel magical. They come from a process so vast and indifferent that the rare moments of alignment feel like messages. They aren't messages, but they are outcomes of an enormous complex system of chance. Think of it this way. If you lived in a world with only 10 people, you might never experience a crazy coincidence. But in a world of 8 billion coincidences become inevitable. The impossibly rare becomes normal when the sample size is massive. Let's return to some of the most famous coincidences in history. There's the story of two brothers in Finland who died in bicycle accidents on the same road under almost identical circumstances exactly 2 years apart. To most people, this sounds supernatural, like a glitch in the universe. But when statisticians analyze it, they see something different. A country with many roads, many bicycles, many years, and many families. Over enough time, an event like this becomes expected. There's also the story of the two men in New York who won the lottery on the same day using the same numbers. It made headlines across the world. But lottery systems generate millions of tickets every week. Duplicates are inevitable. There are also stories about people finding books they lost 20 years earlier in obscure shops, or discovering that their partner shares the same obscure preference for a very specific food from a tiny restaurant in a city neither of them lives in. These stories spread precisely because they surprise us. But mathematically, they're not special. They're what happens when billions of people experience trillions of moments. Here's another important idea. Rare things don't just happen, they happen regularly. Not to the same person twice, but to someone somewhere all the time. We only hear about the ones that stand out. Think about meteorites. To be hit by a meteorite is extraordinarily rare. But with billions of people alive, someone will eventually experience it. Not because the universe is targeting them, but because humans are abundant and random events are constant. Coincidences feel personal because we live inside our own stories. But probability operates outside stories. It doesn't care about meaning, emotions, or narratives. It only cares about outcomes. And this leads us to a counterintuitive but profound truth. The existence of unbelievable coincidences is not evidence of fate, it's evidence of randomness. Randomness guarantees that some events will be so aligned, so perfect, and so unlikely that they seem impossible. And because our brains highlight these events and ignore everything else, the world feels more structured and meaningful than it actually is. But there's good news. Understanding this doesn't make life less magical. In fact, it can make it more magical. Because now, when something extraordinary happens, you can appreciate it as the outcome of a vast and complex universe of chance. Not because you're being controlled, but because the world is large and surprising. Here's one final thought. Every person who has ever lived has experienced coincidences. Kings, scientists, farmers, inventors, astronauts, all of them have stories of moments that felt too perfect to be random. And none of them were chosen. They were simply participants in a universe where randomness occasionally draws a straight line. Coincidences aren't signs. They aren't destiny. They are the natural footprints of probability moving through a world full of people, decisions, and moments. And the fact that we get to witness them, even rarely, is part of what makes being human fascinating. So the next time something impossible happens to you, remember this. It's not the universe sending you a message. It's the universe reminding you how large it truly is, and how small and lucky your place within it can feel. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of probability and coincidence, you might start noticing randomness differently in your everyday life. The small surprises, the rare alignments, the moments that make you stop and think they all carry the quiet signature of chance. And the more you understand probability, the more you realize that the universe doesn't need hidden messages or cosmic intentions to feel extraordinary. It only needs time scale and the endless unfolding of human lives. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to explore more ideas explained with clarity and curiosity, feel free to subscribe and join us for the next episode. Until then, stay curious and enjoy the strange, surprising beauty of randomness.